Can you feel what I feel? Making emotional connections. I read an article the other day on the neurodivergent coach about empathy. The article describes 3 types of empathy: cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. It got me thinking about how we, as neurodivergents, are affected and sometimes unaffected by the emotional states of others. We can also struggle with making emotional connections with other people because we can either lack or be overwhelmed by an empathetic connection. Have you ever walked into a room and were overwhelmed by the emotional state of other people? You can usually detect who is feeling what simply by looking around. You feel what they feel, but you have no background to those emotions. It makes you feel connected and disconnected at the same time. Not unlike getting parts of a picture without being able to see the whole thing. Sometimes you might guess correctly what the picture is supposed to look like, and other times you'll find that you're nowhere close. It can be difficult to make an emotional connection with someone when you have no idea what the background of those emotions are. Determining the root cause can lead to misunderstandings because you're asking questions that seem to be stale and uncaring. Most of the time you're trying to understand what you're feeling from the other person. There's an empathetic tug, but you can't see what's on the other end. Other times you can feel disconnected because you aren't feeling anything from them. The exact opposite of an empath. There's nothing there. You try to relate by asking questions, but again they come out overly sanitized and might even sound cruel. The source is the same. You want to understand what they're going through, but you have a difficult time matching the emotions. Making an emotional connection with someone takes time. In our own way, we struggle to make that connection for any number of reasons. It could be that we don't have any similar experiences to draw from, or, even if we've gone through the same things, we don't have the same emotional response and can't understand their reactions. From their perspective, they can't understand how we could be so cold about an event. The thing that disconnects us emotionally is also what makes us great in a crisis. We're not hindered by an emotional connection to an event, and we can act without reacting in order to work in the best interest of everyone around. The safety of everyone becomes an automatic response. However, that disconnect makes it tough for us to keep deep relationships with other people because we keep trying to read the room, but we're emotionally dyslexic. It's all a jumble and none of it makes sense. So we end up sounding like we don't care. In an effort to understand what the other person might be going through, we ask questions. The problem is, we tend to ask pointed questions and we expect pointed answers. In order to understand what the other person is dealing with, we need to have a better approach. Like asking open-ended questions and allowing the other person to explain it in their own way and time. We have to be patient as they work it out. Emotions aren't as cut and dry as we'd like them to be, and that can be a struggle for us as we try to understand them. Then there are times when we can get emotionally overwhelmed, like walking into a highly emotionally charged room. If we don't recognize where our limitations of tolerance is, we can end up shutting down or exploding. Neither is good for making a connection. Sometimes we have to take a step back, leave the immediate area, and recenter ourselves. This way we can go back with an emotional buffer between what we feel and the emotions in the room. When we combine cognitive empathy with emotional empathy, we can reach a point of compassionate empathy. That is being able to talk about and take action in helping the other person sort through their emotions and the events that have caused or are causing those emotions. We can validate the other person's feelings and offer suggestions that can be accepted or rejected without it hurting our own feelings. We have to remember that everyone deals with emotions in their own way. We can't demand that the other person simply turn off their feelings any more than they can demand we do the same. While we may be able to separate our emotions from the events, those emotions are still there. We might feel things that we can't connect to any particular reason, but that doesn't mean we don't feel what we feel. Likewise, when others are dealing with emotions, our lack of understanding of them doesn't negate the emotional turmoil the other person is going through. When it comes to making emotional connections, we have to remember to be patient with others as well as ourselves. It doesn't come naturally to most of us, even if we can identify emotion types with ease. Some of us are able to label emotions, separate them into categories, and work through them. Most people can't. On the same token, we don't connect emotions to particular actions or events while others do. We may not know why we feel a certain way and can't find a connection when others can. If we learn how events affect the emotions of others, we can be more empathetic towards them. We can learn how the two are tied together, and we can make a connection with the other person. Sometimes that requires mimicking the emotional response until we have a better grasp of it. We might have to take notes, mental or otherwise, in order to build a reference library of understanding. It's not that we can't make emotional connections with other people, it's that it doesn't come as easily for us as it does for others. Empathy is making that emotional connection, and it can take time and practice. Don't feel bad if it doesn't happen right away, and don't give up trying. When you are able to make emotional connections with people, it will deepen your relationships and strengthen your bond. Thank you for joining us here at Neurodivergent Life. If you've liked what you've heard, be sure to support us by becoming a free or paid subscriber at neurodivergentlife.substack.com. Until next time, keep on living that neurodivergent life.